They say third time's a charm, after Xabi Alonso announcing his decision to remain the manager of Levekusen next season, and whatever game of checkers Ruben Amorim was playing when Liverpool were playing chess, the Reds have finally identified the coach they want to see take over the reins in the post-Jurgen Klopp era at Liverpool, and that man of course is Feyenoord's Arne Slot. Now, after previously making two fairly detailed videos about the aforementioned Alonso and Amorim, I couldn't be arsed speculating and making another one until someone's set in stone, and it looks like that's happening with Arne Slot. So with it all been confirmed by this point, I think it's time we talk about the appointment. In this episode, I want to delve into Arne Slot's managerial storyline so far, his tactical framework and intricacies, and how his footballing philosophy may make him the perfect candidate to replace Jurgen Klopp. So let's get into it. I understand that the casual viewer might not have heard of Arne Slot before, and that is absolutely fine. I think it's fair to say he isn't exactly a household name yet, though I believe it's important to talk, at least briefly, about his footballing background. If you just want to hear about his tactics alone, I'll leave a timestamp somewhere on the screen that you can just skip right to. Anyway, let's get into his story. So the Dutchman, like a lot of other great managers across Europe, used to play professionally himself, and whilst he didn't exactly have as prolific as a career as say Pep Guardiola, Zidane or Xabi Alonso did, he was still a very respectable player in his native country of Holland. According to some of his former teammates, Slot weren't exactly rapid, so he had to learn and understand the game through a different lens, using his game intelligence and vision to make his mark. Although once again, it isn't the same level of comparison, he still joins an illustrious list of former midfielders that have successfully transitioned into management. After an 18-year career, playing over 460 games, Slot retired at FC Zwolle, and whilst this was the end of his playing career, it was just the beginning of his managerial one. After hanging up his boots, the Dutchman would spend a year as a youth coach at FC Zwolle before making his move to Cambuur. During his time in the city of Leeuwarden, he would act as an assistant coach under multiple managers before earning the interim manager title on October 15th, 2017. After a turnaround in performances, it was announced him and fellow Dutchman Sipke Kushkov would remain head coach until the end of the season. In that time frame, they took Cambuur from 14th to 3rd in the league, and managed to get to the semi-finals of the KNVB Cup for the first time in the club's history, beating Ajax in the process. Although they missed out on a final to AZ Alkmaar, it was still a very impressive turnaround by the young coach. At the end of the season, Slot would join AZ Alkmaar and would once again take up the role of assistant manager under boss John van der Brom. After 2 years in this role, as his new club finished 3rd and 4th in the 2018 and 2019 seasons respectively, it was announced Arne Slot would take over the reins for the beginning of the 1920 season, and this was the true beginning of his meteoric rise. During this season, he became the first coach to win 19 points in his first 8 games in Holland's top division, and managed to reach the round of 32 in the Europa League. Additionally, before the league was completely stopped, with a subsequent league winner not actually been awarded that year, the young coach went toe-to-toe with Erik ten Hag's historical Ajax team, with AZ finishing 2nd just off goal difference. In the follow-up season, AZ would be knocked out of the UCL in the qualifying stages, but would end up dropping down to the Europa League and pulling off an unthinkable 1-0 win against Napoli. Although at the time of his departure in the December 2020, his AZ side sat 7th in the league, he averaged 2.11 points per game, which was the highest ever for any coach in the club's history. Although he was exceeding expectations, he was sacked due to negotiating with league rivals Feyenoord, and just 1 week later, on the 15th of December, they announced his appointment for the beginning of next season. During Slot's first season, he would well and truly establish himself as one of Europe's most promising young coaches, with Feyenoord finishing 3rd in the league and reaching the inaugural Europa Conference League final. Despite losing 1-0 to Jose Mourinho's AS Roma side, it was only the second time since 1966 where a Dutch team reached one of the European League's finals, and for all of his efforts, he would win the Eredivisie Manager of the Year award. The Dutchman would keep that momentum going into his second season for Feyenoord, and once again they impressed in Europe. They would reach the round of 16 in the Europa League, which hadn't been achieved at the club since 2002. In the process, they absolutely battered Shakhtar 7-1, which was their biggest European win since 1995. Slot became the first Feyenoord manager to win 15 European games. Despite getting knocked out by Roma once again, Slot shone his European qualities while simultaneously guiding Feyenoord to their 2nd league title since 2017. His men finished on 82 points, 7 more than 2nd place PSV, at a goal difference of 51, which is currently higher than Bayern Munich, Liverpool and PSG this season, and lost just 2 league games. Which brings us on to this season. For a third consecutive year, Roma once again knocked Feyenoord out of Europe. However, Arne Slot has still had a very successful season. His side won the KNVB Cup, and despite having 2 games left, has guaranteed a second place finish in the league. Although Feyenoord haven't successfully defended the title, they have scored more goals whilst conceding less than last year and have a higher points per game average in comparison to their title winning run. If it weren't for a freakish PSV side that have lost just 1 game all year, the form Arne Slot has showcased once again this season would have likely resulted in winning consecutive Eredivisie titles. Nevertheless, Arne Slot has clearly established himself as a very promising coach that is not only tactically intelligent and excellent at player development, but it's just a likeable bloke you'd want at the club. Arne Slot has made a name for himself due to the style of football he plays. Unlike most managers, the Dutchman hasn't got one tailor-made style of approach, instead opting for a more methodical style of play depending on how the opposition sets up. Whilst he has tactical similarities with the likes of Klopp, Arteta, Guardiola and Xabi, there's not necessarily one coach you can completely compare his tactics to. The Dutchman has toyed with a couple of formations, but has primarily utilised the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-3-3 with his 2 6s in the pivot, a number 10, 2 wide wingers and a lone centre forward. We've seen an evolution in the fluidity of a team's system, with modern day elite coaches moving away from a more rigid structure in favour of transitional patterns of play, and Arne Slot is no different. His team on paper might be outlined in a 4-2-3-1, but he typically builds up in a 2-3 or 3-2 shape depending on his starting 11. His 2 centre-halves would create the defensive line, and his 2 full-backs would push into the midfield third, with captain Lutschel Geertruida inverted into a central number 6 role, and one of either Hartmann or David Hanko providing that width on the left-hand side. Feyenoord's 3-1 win against Go Ahead Eagles perfectly encapsulates exactly how he wants his team to operate. Geertruida and Hanko, who are naturally centre-backs but can play full-back, push into the midfield to support Feyenoord's number 6, Ramiz Zerouki, whilst the other 2 midfielders push into the half-space zones. In this system, Geertruida would act as an inverted full-back, who drifts into central positions when in possession, but has that freedom to drift into unoccupied spaces. The left-back on the other hand would provide that width, making under or overlapping runs to support the left winger. This results in the opponent's defensive structure being a lot more stretched out, meaning there is more space in the centre of the pitch to play through, as Slot loves to do. Build-up phase revolves around getting the ball into central positions, and then firing long switches to either the winger making runs through the lines, or the 2 number 10s dropping deeper into space. The first phase of build-up play is all about patience and retaining possession, and it's no surprise that Feyenoord ranks second in the Eredivisie with just over 62% possession. Comparing that to Europe's top 5 leagues, only Manchester City, Barcelona and PSG average a higher percentage. It's also no surprise that both David Hanko and Geertruida are amongst the top 5 players in the Eredivisie for total passes completed this season, with them ranking 1st and 4th respectively. Feyenoord are drilled to keep it nice and simple by making quick and interchanging passes across short distances. It's rare that you see them play long balls or switches across the pitch, which is almost polar opposite to Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, and one clear example of this is the use of the inverted right back. Although both Slot and Klopp utilise Geertruida and Alexander-Arnold in that similar zone, they are both very different players. The Dutchman is press resistant, a great progressive player when in possession, and likes to keep things simple, whereas Trent has made a name for himself by taking risks and producing some of the best long passes you've ever seen, and I don't think I've really heard that comparison before. Trent has been given that freedom to drift into central positions and just pull 40, 50, 60 yard passes over the top of the defensive line, which of course leads to a high chance of turnover, but this was encouraged by Klopp as it helps with Liverpool's high counter-pressing approach. His 76% passing accuracy this season ranks him in the bottom half of fullbacks in Europe, and although that figure sounds negative, it's by design. Geertruida on the other hand averages 89.5%, which ranks him in the 99th percentile of that same metric, due to him not making any risky passes and keeping it simple like previously mentioned. I think it was important to clarify the difference of playstyles between the 2 fullbacks, because I've seen a lot of comparisons in terms of having that profile that can invert from the right, and whilst on paper they might have the same sequence of patterns, when shifting in and out of possession, their roles are very, very different, but we'll get more onto that later. Anyway, moving up the pitch, like I previously mentioned, Slot's philosophy, more specifically in the attacking patterns and phases, doesn't revolve around one singular approach, meaning his team alternates their tactics depending on the opponent's setup to create chances for themselves. For example, last season, Feyenoord ranked first in the Eredivisie for crosses into the box, and mid-table for through balls between the lines, whereas this season just gone, those two metrics were completely reversed, with them ranking first in the league for total through balls and 7th in the league for crosses into the box, and this just shows how tactically flexible Slot is, and the importance of this is going to be paramount in his Liverpool career. Moving into midfield, his midfield three consists of a number 6, that usually been Mats Vijver, second number 6 that plays more of a box-to-box midfielder in Quinten Timber, and the number 10 in Calvin Stengs. Mats Vijver sits in front of the back line and acts as a transition between the defensive and midfield third. He's the player that kind of makes the team function, as he finds pockets of space to receive passes out from the back line and quickly recycles possession. He regularly receives passes whilst on the half turn and quickly shifts his body positioning to see the full range of the pitch, whilst operating as that central hub to advance the ball forward. Vijver is also a defensive powerhouse, considering Feyenoord average one of the highest possession stats in Europe. Vijver still completes 4.6 tackles and interceptions per 90, which rank him in the top 7% of midfielders in Europe. He also averages 1.75 dribblers tackled per 90 at a 55.6% success rate, which ranks him in the top 3% of players in that same metric. Just for a bit of context, Arturo Wendo averages just under 1 dribbler tackled per 90 at a success rate of 32.5, which ranks him in the bottom 8% of midfielders. Not only is Vijver a great defensive unit and a constant passing option, but he's also a monster in the air. His 3.1 aerials 1 per 90 once again ranks him in the top 1% of midfielders in Europe, so he's a very well-rounded number 6. His midfield partner normally consists of Quinten Timber, who is also a very well-rounded midfielder that excels in progressing the ball forward, and this is why I think Alexis McAllister would be perfect in that role. Just to reel off some stats, Timber ranks in the top percent of midfielders in Europe this season for non-penalty expected goals and assists, passes into the penalty area, and tackles in the final third, showcasing just how effective he is in more advanced positions. With 7 goals and 9 assists this season, he is more than just a defensive-minded midfielder. Ahead of the two is Calvin Stengs, a number 10 tasked with creating chances centrally or from wider angles. He ranks in the top 1% of midfielders for goals and assists, key passes, and goal-creating actions, with him being a large threat in those right half spaces. That Dutch midfield has very much been the blueprint in allowing Slot to implement his tactics. Getting back into his tactics, regardless of what formation Slot sets up with, he typically uses his front three the same. One of his wingers will hold the width to create spaces in the opponent's defensive line, whilst the other winger inverts into central positions, with width being provided by the fullback. In Slot's Feyenoord system, we would see Jan Kubo Minter, of course on loan from Newcastle, provide that width, while the left winger in Igor Pakshao would operate more centrally. To complete the front three, the striker is used as not only that main goal scorer, but also as a facilitator. Santiago Jimenez has had an excellent campaign this year, scoring 23 goals in 30 Eredivisie games, but he's much more than just a poacher. He regularly drops into deeper positions to receive the ball and provide that extra passing option, which is really important in Slot's system. Because of the 2 advanced 8s, and of course the 2 wingers, the striker plays a valuable role in creating space for those box crashing runs into the half space, and we can see that by his heat map. Because of the 2 8s love to advance into those half spaces, the striker's ability to drop off and take a defender with him opens up the opportunity to make those penetrative runs, and this is so crucial for creating goal scoring opportunities, and for that you need a profile that is not only a strong and physical build, but also highly technical and with a high footballing IQ. When it comes to creating a team that wants to accomplish great achievements, having the correct profiles at each position is paramount. Regardless of the level of player or philosophy, having those player profiles with the ability to implement the manager's tactical approach can make all the difference between success and failure. So with that being said, let's look at the current Liverpool team and see what players can fit into Slot's system. Starting off with the goalkeeper, and I think it's quite self-explanatory. I don't think I'm being biased when I say that Alisson Becker is probably one of the best keepers in the world, certainly in the Premier League, so he'll remain first choice, no doubt in my mind. one of the best shot stoppers, excellent distribution, and comfortable on the ball, so he's perfect for Slot. The Dutchman likes to incorporate his goalkeeper into the first phase of build-up, meaning he would typically play more advanced in his box to recycle the ball between the defensive shape, and Alisson certainly does this. Because Liverpool like to play out from the back, Alisson averages around 38 passes per game, with an average passing length of less than 25 metres, meaning he doesn't just look to go long and volley up the pitch every time. Centre-backs like Alisson will probably remain the same, with the only dependent being Ibou Konaté's fitness and injury concerns. The centre-halves in Slot's system need to be very comfortable in possession and great ball-playing defenders. Both David Hanko and Gernot Trauner rank in the top 1% and 2% respectively for attempted and progressive passes per 90, highlighting the efficiency needed. When both fit, Virgil van Dijk and Konaté are one of the best centre-back partnerships in the league, who are both excellent distributors and world-class at defending the wider channels and transitions, which is once again needed in Slot's system. Despite the emergence of Jarell Quansah, who looks like he'll develop into an excellent centre-back, and with Joel Matip leaving and Konaté's injury concerns, Liverpool will no doubt look to bring in another centre-back. That market is absolutely stacked right now, so there is endless players Liverpool could bring in. We've been linked with the likes of Gonzalo Ignacio, Lenny Yoro, and Ousmane Diamonde, who are some of the most promising defenders in Europe. And this isn't even mentioning the likes of Castello Luca Bar, William Pacho, or Pierre Hinkeby, who could be some serious contenders too. On one hand, I don't want to stunt the growth of Quansah or bench Konaté because in my opinion I think he's one of the best in the game at defending those wider channels. Signing a new centre-back is definitely on the list, although not a priority. One of the priorities though in my opinion is a new full-back, particularly left-back. Arne Slot likes his full-backs to be creative and tactically versatile, and you don't get much better than both Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Since Jurgen Klopp's arrival at Liverpool, both players ranked first and second, respectively, for most assists from defenders in Premier League history, so they're statistically perfect for the new system. With Trent and now Conor Bradley being able to play on that right hand side, I think that role will be nailed down for years to come. But I might make a separate video on that, so I don't really want to get into it too much. The left back on the other hand is a position that's up for debate. I think Kostas Tsimikas will probably leave the club, and I think Andy Robertson needs a bit of competition that's of his level. Slot's left back in particular needs to have the ability to both invert into midfield and provide that width by overlapping his winger. And although Robbo, especially in his earlier days at Liverpool, would regularly make those overlapping runs and fire crosses into the box, I'm a bit sceptical about his comfortability on the ball when inverting into more central areas. One of my first signings would be someone like Wolves' Ryan Aït-Nouri, or even Tottenham's Destiny Udogie, two young fullbacks who are both very technical, agile, and comfortable rotating into more advanced positions up the pitch. I think Aït-Nouri in particular is a player we've seen Liverpool linked with for some years now. Still just 22, with nearly 100 Premier League appearances, he should definitely be a player Liverpool should be looking at. Moving into midfield, this is easily Liverpool's most chaotic position when it comes to the unknown. Slot sets up in a 4-2-3-1, obviously that consists of two starting sixes, with one of them playing more of an 8, and a number 10 like previously mentioned. Although it's not necessarily a problem to have, Liverpool have a plethora of midfielders that all kind of want to operate in the same positions. Although McAllister has been used as a 6 a lot, his best position is the left-sided number 8 in my opinion, who likes to get into advanced positions as well as chipping in with that defensive support. But that's kind of the same with Curtis Jones and Ryan Gravenberch. Equally on the right-hand side of midfield, you've got Harvey Elliott, who has been phenomenal for Liverpool this season, and Dominic Szoboszlai, who's got all the tools to be a world-class midfielder. You've got 5 or 6 guys that are all kind of fighting for 1 or 2 positions. The 2 right-sided 8s just mentioned can play as that 10, but I think the role is perfectly suited for Cody Gakpo, who we'll talk about more later on. Just using midfielders at our disposal, I think regardless of what you do, you're benching a player that deserves to start, and as much as I prefer McAllister to play further forward, he's probably more suited to play as a 6 just so you can fit more players into the team. I absolutely love both Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. I just can't find a way to play him, and as much as Gravenberch hasn't exactly lived up to expectations just yet, he's probably the more suited player to start alongside McAllister, but that of course still leaves out both Szoboszlai and the 2 English lads just mentioned. And I've not even mentioned the 2 6s that we do actually have in Endo and Bajcetic. As good as Endo has been, he's 31 and was never a long-term signing anyway. He showed a lot of tenacity since he arrived, but has a lot of flaws in his game. As for Bajcetic, I absolutely love the kid, and I think he genuinely has a future at Liverpool, especially under Slot. He has a very similar profile to Max Vijver, who was instrumental for the Dutchman's Feyenoord side. You know, both over 6 foot and cover a lot of ground defensively, and are technically gifted on the ball despite their tall frame. I think he'll get a lot of game time for Arne Slot. But the problem with him is he literally played 1 game last season, so it's going to take a lot of time for him to not only get to match fitness, but to how Slot wants him to play. So for the immediate future, I think Slot should definitely prioritise signing a mobile defensive midfielder. It's just an absolute killer defensively. He could bring Vijver with him, or look for players such as channel favourite Manuel Ugarte, Morten Højmund, or even Maxence Kakare from Lyon. As for the front 3 or 4 if you want to include the number 10, I don't think you need to make too many changes in the immediate future. As previously mentioned, Slot likes to instruct one of his wingers to provide the width, but come on the inside if needed, whilst the other inverts into more central positions, and I think you have those profiles with Luis Diaz and Mo Salah. As much as I might not necessarily be the biggest fan of Diaz, he's the perfect winger for Slot's system. He's a hard worker that doesn't stop pressing from the front, he can provide the width and burst down the wing, or he can cut in on his right foot using his excellent technical ability. Salah on the other hand is perfect when finding space centrally. At his best, he was playing in the half spaces and cutting in on the left foot and just smashing chances at goal. However, since Klopp transitioned into the 3-2-5 out of possession, the width on the right hand side was largely being provided by Salah, which is no surprise that we've seen his numbers absolutely fall off a cliff. It's become a bit of a joke at this point just how one-footed the Egyptian actually is, and putting him in situations where he has to cross the ball into the box is just never going to be a strong suit. With Salah turning 32 in a couple of weeks, not to mention a strong interest from several Saudi clubs, there will become a point in the near future where we will have to talk about him potentially being moved on, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. As for the 10, this is another position we just don't need to think about signings in. We've got Cody Gakpo, who I think will thrive there, not to mention McAllister, Szoboszlai, and Harvey Elliott, who can all play there too. I put Gakpo's name there in particular because of the way Slot used Calvin Stengs at Feyenoord, and how similar them two players are. Both have a tall frame, are deceptively quick and agile, and both like to glide around the final third and make runs into the half spaces, and they both work extremely hard when pressing the opposition line. I think Gakpo has had a lot of criticism that just isn't justified at all. Since his arrival, he has constantly been played out of position, whether that's up front, on the right, or in midfield. And at the same time, this season he's averaged a better goal contribution per 90 than Leon Bailey, Anthony Gordon, and Bukayo Saka, who I think most would say have all had good seasons. So I think fans need to just chill out a bit. Either way, if he doesn't quite work in that position, we have Szoboszlai, who can happily play there and interchange with the Dutchman. Now the final position, that being the striker of course, it's a bit of a problematic area. As much as I love Darwin Núñez and the work rate and entertainment that comes with him, he is a problem. He's underperformed all of his underlying data by quite a significant margin since his big money move, and unfortunately he has become a bit of a meme through his sheer catalogue of just missed chances. I said to one of the boys a couple of months ago that you get to the point where you become so unlucky, things have to naturally start getting better, just numbers wise, but that hasn't seemed to be the case at all. I think the problem with Núñez is he's almost an anomaly when looking at strikers in today's game. He makes some of the hardest chances to score look like light work, but when it comes to the fundamentals of basic levels of shooting, he really struggles. You know, based on his performances, you'd rather him feed off scraps and half chances. And whilst the striker with the ability to do that is incredible, when he's in a position to bag easy chances, he just doesn't do it, and it really is becoming a problem. To be honest, I'm at a crossroads with him. Fundamentally, he has all the tools to be one of the best strikers in the league, and that isn't even talking about how hard working and determined he is, and just how box office he is, but he can't continue to show the levels of finishing that we've seen from him. He scored 18 goals and registered 13 assists in all competition this season, and whilst that works out at a goal contribution every 170 minutes, which isn't bad at all, with the likes of Joshua Zirkzee and Viktor Gyökeres on the market, let's hope he can find his shooting boots under Arne Slot. So to summarise, on the left is the starting 11 I'd select before making any signings, and on the right is my team, factoring in player sales and realistic purchases. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I understand it's very long, especially for the average lengths of my videos,
I understand I haven't posted in a while, but fans of the channel now should probably know that I will never just post for the sake of it. You know, every video I post, especially nowadays, I've took a lot of time in and I'm proud of my work. But I do promise you that consistency will get better. Guarantee that. So just bear with me. Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to give your thoughts in the comments below. I will reply to literally every single one of them. So yeah, that's me, and I'll see you soon.